Chapter 58:48. Bai Yin Che and Ling Er also enter the Thunder Lake. When the crowd saw that the two of them did not choose to stand at the edge, but chose to enter the center of the Thunder Lake, they all widened their eyes in shock and suspicion. Do the two of them not want to live anymore? They actually chose to stand at the center of the Thunder Lake. Aren't they afraid of losing their lives? I don't know. Maybe they also have the Thunder attribute. Even if they have the Thunder attribute, it is impossible for them to enter the center of the Thunder Lake as soon as they arrived. They are really bold. While the crowd was guessing, Bai Yin Che and Ling Er used their actions to show everyone what it meant to be strong. The thunder and lightning fell on the two of them mercilessly. However, the two of them just closed their eyes calmly. The two of them did not even show the slightest hint of pain in the face of the thick and terrifying thunder and lightning. It was as if the thunder and lightning did not fall on them. Seeing this, the crowd completely gave up their previous plan. It seemed that their judgment was wrong. Their physical strength was really terrifying. The sun was shining brightly, and the sky was clear and the clouds were beautiful. Qing Devil looked at the endless forest in front of him and frowned. These guys are really good at running. I still can't find them after such a long time. It was an accident that Di Beichun and the others escaped. He did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would see through the illusion at this critical moment. In his haste, there was no way for him to stop all of them. In addition, the illusion was condensed from the blood in his heart. When the illusion was broken, his soul was inevitably injured. Fortunately, Jun Lingxuan came to him. After devouring Jun Lingxuan's soul, his soul power was replenished. The biggest problem now was that Jun Lingxuan's physical strength was limited. He cannot really use his full strength. As long as they are still on the ancient battlefield, we can find them, Xiao Shou said with a smile. During these days, she followed Qing Devil and watched him lead the family team to kill all the enemies. His invincible appearance really made her admire him. This kind of man was the kind of man Xiao Shou liked. He had extremely powerful means, a decisive character, and an arrogant and domineering aura. She could only reach the peak of her life if she was with such a man, even though she knew that the person in front of her was Qing Devil and not Jun Lingxuan. So what? Everyone thought that he was her fiancé, Jun Lingxuan. In addition, Qing Devil also planned to live as Jun Lingxuan. For her, nothing had changed. Azure Fiend glanced at Xiao Shou indifferently with a cold expression. Do you know where they will appear? I don't know. Xiao Shou shook her head. This area is too big. They might have turned back. She was also very helpless about this. Since he knew that Qing Devil was willing to help him kill Bailey Hongzhuang and her companions, he couldn't wait to find Bailey Hongzhuang and her companions as soon as possible. He couldn't do anything to them before. Now he could finally deal with them. However, these people seemed to have disappeared into thin air. There was no trace of them until now. Qing Devil turned his eyes and looked not far away. His eyes were malicious and cold-blooded. As long as I catch them, they will definitely die. How dare they take my things? How dare they? Chapter 58:49. Xiao Shou was a little confused. She had never heard Qing Devil mention this before. In the dreamland, she didn't notice that Bailey Hongzhuang and her companions had taken anything away. However, since the Azure Demon valued it so much, it must be very impressive. Qing Devil's face darkened. He clenched his fists and said, "It's that woman, Bailey Hongzhuang." Xiao Shou was surprised. She only knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had been looking for a way out, but she didn't know what she had taken away at that time. Yes, it's Bailey Hongzhuang. Qing Devil raised the corners of his mouth into a playful smile. She's a smart and interesting woman. The dreamland that he was so proud of was broken by a cultivator at the Nebula Realm. In his opinion, it was impossible. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did it. Even a cultivator with a higher cultivation couldn't come out of the multi-layered dreamland. However, such a beautiful and intelligent woman did it. It was really interesting. As Qing Devil finished his words, Xiao Shou's heart skipped a beat. Whether it was his words full of interest or his playful smile, they all revealed one message. Qing Devil was interested in Bailey Hongzhuang. She had seen this expression many times since she was a child. No matter what the reason was, when men and women were interested in each other, they would like each other in the end. She always thought that Qing Devil hated Bailey Hongzhuang. She thought that after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, Qing Devil would kill her mercilessly to avenge himself. However, she hesitated at this moment. Maybe the situation would be completely different from what she expected after Bailey Hongzhuang appeared. Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiao Sou gritted her teeth. Was Bailey Hongzhuang really that much stronger than her? Why did even Qing Devil treat Bailey Hongzhuang differently? Bailey Hongzhuang, who was immersed in her cultivation, did not know that Xiao Sou was currently gnashing her teeth at her. At this moment, she only wanted to cultivate properly to improve her own cultivation. The process of lightning body tempering not only increased the strength of one's body, it also helped one's cultivation to a certain extent. Because during this process, she discovered that lightning could actually temper origin power as well. Her elemental energy had always been relatively pure and condensed, but every time the lightning passed by, her elemental energy would become even purer. Previously, she was already on the verge of breaking through, but the lightning forcefully suppressed it for her. I think we've really come to the right place. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. Normally, it was not easy to find such a suitable place to cultivate. Xiao He, who was at the side, nodded while trembling. Every time the lightning entered its body, its white fur would stand up like a hedgehog, turning it into an exploding fur ball. Vaguely, it felt that it had more fur than before. After the explosion, its fluffy fur covered its eyes so much that it could not even see clearly. Master, do you think it's time for me to fix my fur? Xiao He brushed the fur in front of its eyes and finally saw its master's appearance clearly. Chapter 5850. Master, are you telling me the truth? Xiao He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's smiling eyes. Why was it so suspicious? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, the corners of her eyes smiling. What I said is naturally true. In any case, you're always so angry. This kind of image is your true nature. Master, after understanding Bailey Hongzhuang's real intention, Xiao He pouted with a gloomy expression. Haha, good girl. On the other side of the ancient battlefield, Di Xiaofeng and Bailey Yunyan led the Bailey family's team forward. Looking at the empty environment, everyone felt helpless. We've been out of the inheritance for a while and met other teams, but we haven't seen Beichen and Ta Xing. Did we go in the wrong direction? Di Xiaofeng looked around. Even though the ancient battlefield was huge, after a few months, everyone had basically gathered. However, they still hadn't met anyone from their side. Bailey Yunyan bit her lips in distress. I don't think so. I heard that Beichen and the rest are safe. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be a problem to go in this direction. Forget it. It's fine as long as everyone is safe. The most important thing is that Jun Lingxuan is looking for Beichen after his strength increased. Emperor Xiaofeng had a worried look on his face. This was what worried him the most. Before entering the ancient battlefield, he promised his grandmother that he would take good care of Beichen. However, he hadn't even seen Beichen after entering for so long. I really don't know how Jun Lingxuan got lucky. Bailey Tianhing's face was gloomy. He was already completely suppressed, but Senior Shu Yu appeared and increased his strength. Di Xiaofeng fell into silence. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou were getting more and more troublesome. Now that it had become so strong, if they did not suppress it as soon as possible, once it became so strong that they could not control it, it would become extremely terrible. Are you talking about me? A cold and mocking voice sounded, making people's hearts turn cold. Hearing this voice, Di Xiaofeng hurriedly turned his head and noticed that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou's figures were slowly approaching not far away. Speak of the devil. Di Xiaofeng's face darkened. He didn't want to see Jun Lingxuan. Since young, he and Jun Lingxuan had been fighting openly and secretly because of the conflicts between their families. It was just that they did not expect that after so many years of fighting, the most intense conflict would be transferred to Di Beichen. Di Xiaofeng, it seems that you haven't found Di Beichen yet. Qing Devil's eyes were filled with coldness, but she couldn't hide her disappointment. She thought that after finding Di Xiaofeng, she would be able to find Di Beiqian and the others. However, from the current situation, it was obvious that Di Xiaofeng hadn't met up with Di Beiqian and the others. What does it have to do with you? Di Xiaofeng looked disdainful. He had always been too lazy to talk nonsense with Jun Lingxuan. Di Xiaofeng, don't be too arrogant. Xiao Shou warned coldly. It was fine in the past, but the current Azure Demon strength was no match for Jun Lingxuan's. Di Xiaofeng was definitely not Qing Devil's opponent. Do I have to be polite to you? Bailey Yunyan said rudely. Chapter 58-51. Seeing that Bailey Yunyan dared to speak to her in such a tone, Xiao Shou couldn't control her anger. The Bailey family was undoubtedly an insignificant existence in her eyes. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't become the head of the Bailey family, no one would know about them. So what? Facing Xiao Shou's surging aura, Bailey Yunyan wasn't afraid at all. When Xiao Shou was the saint of light, she had always regarded others as nothing and never put them in her eyes. Bailey Yunyan was already used to it. Now, everything was different. Bailey Yunyan was a member of the Bailey family and was proud of her identity. Xiao Shou took a step forward and was about to teach Bailey Yunyan a lesson. However, the Qing Devil stopped her. Xiao Shou looked at the Qing Devil. She wanted to say something, but hesitated. The Qing Devil calmed her down with just a glance. Don't worry, there will be plenty of opportunities to do it. Looking at the man's deep eyes, Xiao Shou became as obedient as a kitten. In front of the Qing Devil, she deeply felt that she was insignificant. Only in front of him was she a little woman. Di Xiaofeng noticed the subtle movements between Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou and was a little surprised. Although he already knew that the two had a good relationship, Xiao Shou had never listened to Jun Lingxuan's words before. You really don't know where Di Beiqian is? Do you have any way to contact him? Jun Lingxuan stared at Di Xiaofeng. The two were about the same height, but for some reason, everyone felt that Jun Lingxuan was looking down on them. If we could contact each other, we would have met long ago. Why would we wait until now? Looking at Jun Lingxuan, Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but have a strange feeling. For some reason, he felt that Jun Lingxuan was different from before. He couldn't tell exactly what was different, but he was certain that there was definitely something different. In that case, I have no choice but to kill you first, Qing Devil said coldly. If I can't find Di Beiqian, I can only collect some interest. Di Beiqian and Di Xiaofeng have a very good relationship. If Di Xiaofeng dies, it will be a big blow to him. Xiao Shou's eyes lit up. Whether it was Di Beiqian or Di Xiaofeng, as long as they died, she would be able to vent her anger. What a vicious woman. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were cold. In the past, he and Xiao Shou had known each other for many years, and their relationship wasn't that bad. But now, he truly saw Xiao Shou's character. This woman was vicious to begin with. Hearing Di Xiaofeng's ruthless words, Xiao Shou looked a little embarrassed, but she quickly calmed down. So what? This day, next year, will be the day of your death. When Nangong Yuqing passed by, he saw the scene of Jun Lingxuan and Di Xiaofeng tit for tat, and his eyes flashed with a trace of interest. Di Beiqian also said that Jun Lingxuan was possessed. I think he was talking nonsense. Thinking of this, he felt angry. When Di Beiqian had told him this, he had believed it to be true. He had never thought that it would be false. However, Xiao Shou not only didn't die, but also stuck to him like this. Just based on this point, Jun Lingxuan couldn't possess him. Chapter 58-52. After hearing Nangong Yuqing's words, Xiao Shou's eyes flashed with a trace of nervousness. The reason why she wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others was that only they knew that the Qing Devil had possessed Jun Lingxuan. She didn't want to expose this secret, and only hoped that no one would know about it. Nangong Yuqing, did you just say that Jun Lingxuan was possessed? Nangong Yuqing's voice wasn't low, so Di Xiaofeng also heard it. This is what your brother said. I really didn't expect him to make up such a nonsense reason. When he thought about how he had believed it to be true, and had even told so many people about it. He felt extremely embarrassed. He really did not understand how Bewitching could be so shameless to tell him such a lie without blushing or skipping a beat. Nangong Yuqing's words seemed to have opened a door in Di Xiaofeng's heart. He had never been able to figure out what was wrong, but now he finally understood. Perhaps others thought that Jun Lingxuan was the real Jun Lingxuan, but he believed what Di Beichun said. Di Beichun definitely wouldn't make up such a thing. The only reason he said so was that it was all true. His enemy knew his enemy the best. He and Jun Lingxuan had been enemies for so many years, so he knew Jun Lingxuan's situation very well. Even if the person in front of him was very similar to Jun Lingxuan, there were always some differences. He believed that the person in front of him wasn't the real Jun Lingxuan. "You're not the real Jun Lingxuan, right?" Di Xiaofeng asked in a low voice. Although it was a question, he said it in a certain tone. "I don't know what nonsense you're talking about," Xiao Sou immediately retorted. "Di Beichun made up such a rumor before, but you also spread such a rumor. You really are brothers." However, seeing Xiao Sou's anxious look, Di Xiaofeng was even more certain. However, he didn't understand why Xiao Sou was protecting the possessed person. Logically speaking, this person should be her enemy. Don't say such nonsense to stall for time. Today, you will die without a doubt. Endless murderous aura erupted in an instant as Qing Devil mercilessly attacked Di Xiaofeng. He was also a smart guy. He felt that his disguise was already good enough. Of course, with his identity, he didn't need to try so hard to disguise himself. Even the June's people couldn't see any clues, but this guy actually found something wrong with one glance. He had not liked these smart fellows. It would be troublesome to keep them alive, so it was better to use the simplest method to kill them. Seeing Jun Lingxuan attacking, Di Xiaofeng wasn't afraid at all. The surroundings' temperatures. Xiaofeng's, the devil's. But at this time, everyone was most shocked by Di Xiaofeng's strength, because they could clearly feel that Di Xiaofeng's. Third-level radiant moon. How is this possible? Xiao Sou's eyes widened. Her beautiful face was filled with astonishment. Before entering the ancient battlefield, she clearly noticed that Di Xiaofeng hadn't broken through to the radiant moon realm. It had only been a few months. How did Di Xiaofeng reach the radiant moon realm? Chapter 58-53. Originally, everyone thought that Shunfeng's cultivation level was the highest among all of them. However, unexpectedly, Di Xiaofeng had quietly broken through to the third stage of the radiant moon. Although Jun Lingxuan had displayed an astonishing strength recently, no one knew if he could defeat Di Xiaofeng, who was at the third stage of the radiant moon realm. With the eruption of the commotion, it immediately attracted the attention of the cultivators not far away. When they saw that the people confronting each other were Di Xiaofeng and Jun Lingxuan, they were not surprised at all. A few months ago, Jun Lingxuan had declared that he would find the cultivators of the Di family and the Lin family and kill them all. However, it was strange that Di Beichun's group seemed to have disappeared into thin air. After so long, they still hadn't appeared in front of everyone. Now, Jun Lingxuan had finally found Di Xiaofeng. This battle was unavoidable. Third stage of the radiant moon realm. Not bad. Qing Devil raised his eyebrows, and the killing intent in his eyes intensified. Although I don't know who you are, you must be very powerful to be able to stay in the ancient battlefield. Di Xiaofeng's expression was calm. It was clear that an expert who could possess Jun Lingxuan's body must have a terrifying spiritual power. This showed that this person was very powerful when he was alive. Therefore, even if his cultivation level was higher than his opponent's, he didn't dare to underestimate his opponent. A real expert, even if his cultivation level was limited, must have a terrifying combat power. Qing Devil narrowed his eyes. This guy in front of him was indeed a character. He had stayed in the ancient battlefield for so many days and met a lot of cultivators. However, this person in front of him was undoubtedly the most intelligent one. He didn't refute. At this time, the more he refuted, the more guilty he would seem. For him, the easiest way to solve this kind of problem was to kill. Ling Sun. Xiao Soa looked at Jun Lingxuan worriedly. Although she knew that Qing Devil's strength was not simple, there were still some small problems due to the fact that he had just fused with his body. As a result, his strength was still at the first stage of the Radiant Moon Realm. If the Qing Devil couldn't deal with the gap between the two levels, wouldn't it be terrible? Qing Devil just gave Xiao Soa a look which was full of endless coldness and deterrence. She shut her mouth instantly and dared not say another word. The man in front of her was obviously ruthless to the extreme, but it was this kind of domineering and ruthless that particularly fascinated her. Do it. Qing Devil moved. Although her aura was weaker than Di Xiaofeng's, her momentum was not weaker at all. In fact, it was even more powerful. After sensing this, Di Xiaofeng was even more certain that the real Jun Lingxuan definitely didn't have such an aura. His pitch-black eyes flashed with a trace of graveness. The power of the fire attribute poured out, leaving him with no chance to retreat. Behind him was a group of cultivators from the Bailey family. Compared to the teams from the Jun and Xiao families, their numbers were simply too small. Just based on the other party's terrifying mental strength, it was unrealistic to want to escape, so the only thing they could do was to fight with their backs against the wall. Perhaps he would die here today, but he wasn't afraid. Bang! 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 The collision of the fire attribute and the metal attribute. Chapter 58-54. Nangong Yuqing's gaze was fixed on the two of them. He had long heard that Jun Lingxuan's strength had increased a lot recently. However, he had never seen Jun Lingxuan make a move. What he had heard were only rumors. Only after seeing the two of them fight did he realize that Jun Lingxuan's strength was much greater than what he had imagined. Even when facing Di Xiaofeng, who was a rank 3 Radiant Moon, he was still able to deal with him steadily. At this moment, Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but be absent-minded for a moment. Jun Lingxuan was actually similar to Di Beichen. This was because Di Beichen's ability to fight above his level was also very terrifying. Now, Jun Lingxuan was actually able to do the same. Over the years, Nangong Yuqing was very familiar with Jun Lingxuan. When he thought of what Di Xiaofeng had said, his mind was a little chaotic. He couldn't figure out who was telling the truth. After seeing that Di Xiaofeng's strength wasn't able to suppress Jun Lingxuan, Bailey Yunyan was a little worried. They had already seen how terrifying the experts of the ancient battlefield were. There were clearly so many treasures here, but no one dared to touch them. This was because as long as they touched them, their lives would be forfeit. This person was someone from the ancient battlefield, just as methods alone were something they had never encountered before. At this moment, she suddenly noticed that Xiao Soa was about to join the battle with a sword in her hand. In the next moment, Bailey Yunyan also rushed in and blocked in front of Xiao Soa. Xiao Soa, you still want to sneak attack? Bailey Yunyan was as cold as ice. Because of her good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang, she was filled with disgust for Xiao Soa. At this moment, when she saw that Xiao Soa was planning to use such a despicable method, the disgust in her heart became even stronger. Looking at Bailey Yunyan, who suddenly appeared in front of her, Xiao Soa was slightly startled. She expressionlessly mocked, "So what? Today I want to compete with you." Bailey Yunyan waved her sword and pointed it at Xiao Soa. "Heh." Xiao Soa sneered, her beautiful eyes filled with disgust and resentment. Woman who overestimates herself. Why don't you take a look at your own status? Do you think you're worthy? Xiao Soa, you're no longer the Radiant Saint, yet you still haven't put away that arrogant aura. Do you know why you can't compare to Hongzhuang? Just based on this point alone, you don't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as her. Bailey Yunyan was also very eloquent. Her words were not polite at all. You. Xiao So's anger was immediately aroused. Who do you think you are? You're full of nonsense. Bailey Hongzhuang was the woman she hated the most in her life. In the past, she had never been afraid to compare herself with others, because no woman's halo could surpass hers. Until Bailey Hongzhuang appeared. Everything changed. What she hated the most now was being compared to Bailey Hongzhuang. It only proved her inadequacy time and time again. I'm speaking the truth, Bailey Yunyan coldly said. Hong Zhuang is the one who really doesn't want to be compared to you. The difference between the two of you is like heaven and earth. Haven't you always looked down on me? Let's compete once. Don't think that you're so great just because you're the young lady of the Xiao family. Xiao Seiwu could only feel her blood rushing to her head. It was this kind of person that she didn't put in her eyes that actually dared to challenge her. Chapter 58-55. The battle between women was not inferior to that of men. The crowd could even feel that the murderous aura between Xiao Sou and Bailey Yunyan was even thicker. Both of them had attacked viciously with the sole intention of taking each other's lives. Initially, when the crowd saw that Bailey Yunyan had taken the initiative to challenge Xiao Sou, they had thought that she was digging her own grave. However, after the two had exchanged blows, they realized that Bailey Yunyan's powers had become so outstanding. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had become the master of the Bailey family, Bailey Yunyan and the D family had become very close. I never thought that her powers would increase by so much in such a short period of time. In the past, Bailey Yunyan may have been outstanding in the Bailey family, but she was not worthy of being in the limelight. Now, she can actually fight Xiao Sou to a standstill. This is incredible. Every dog has its day. If Xiao Sou were to be defeated by Bailey Yunyan, that would be a very interesting scene. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had appeared, the crowd had felt that this battle between her and Xiao Sou would be very interesting. Now, the situation has escalated. Ding, ding, ding. The sharp swords clashed, and sparks flew in all directions. Xiao Sou heard the discussion from the crowd and felt like a sharp knife stabbing into her heart. A thick, surging murderous aura almost condensed into a solid form. Her movements became even more ferocious, and her water-based powers exploded. This was a clash between water and fire. The moist water and the scorching heat of fire clashed together. The cultivators standing on both sides felt two completely different sensations. Bang! The air suddenly became moist, and a water dragon appeared out of thin air. It opened its bloody mouth and charged mercilessly towards Bailey Yunyan. Bailey Yunyan's eyes flashed with astonishment when she sensed the terrifying aura that was charging towards her. This was not a technique that an average cultivator would be able to pull off. However, she did not fall into a state of panic just because of this. The raging flames turned into fiery lotuses and shot towards Xiao Sou. With her current strength, she was still unable to conjure such a huge attack. This fire lotus was her most outstanding move. Xiao Sou's eyes flashed with disdain when she saw the beautiful fire lotuses. These fire lotuses were not enough to deal with her water dragon. Since she got together with Qing Devil had taught her some tricks. The water dragon was a new trick she had learned recently. So this was the true power of elemental power. In the next moment, Xiao Sou's eyes narrowed. She realized that Bailey Yunyan's fire lotus was not aimed at the water dragon, but at her. She hurriedly controlled the water dragon to block all of this, but she was shocked to find that the fire lotus was not extinguished after passing through the water dragon's body. It attacked her again. At the same time, the water dragon was getting closer and closer to Bailey Yunyan. However, Bailey Yunyan showed no signs of dodging. Damn it! Injuring the enemy by 1,000, but losing 800 of her own men. This woman was actually going all out. Bang! Boom! A loud sound rang out. The crowd watched as the water dragon charged towards Bailey Yunyan and sent her light yellow figure flying into the distance. A deep trench appeared on the ground, and Bailey Yunyan's figure was thrown 1,000 meters away. She was lying on the ground and could not be seen clearly. Chapter 58-56. A tragic wail suddenly sounded. Xiao Sou covered her face as if she had gone crazy. She never thought that the fire lotus would suddenly explode. It was so close to her that she didn't even have time to guard against it. At that moment, she only felt the extremely hot flame exploding near her face. The sparks directly splashed on her face and body. If she was prepared, she could use her primary energy to form a layer of protection. But all of this happened too suddenly. She didn't expect Bailey Union to have such an idea. The sharp scream attracted everyone's attention. Looking at this unexpected scene, everyone was a little shocked. Even the Azure Fiend and Di Xiaofeng, who were fighting each other, looked over. Di Xiaofeng stopped after seeing that Bailey Union was injured. He quickly rushed to her side. Looking at the pale Bailey Union on the ground, he quickly helped her up and held her in his arms. He asked with concern, "Union, how are you?" Bailey Union smiled and shook her head. "Xiaofeng, I'm fine." Although she was injured and the degree was not light, she was still alive. Di Xiaofeng quickly put the elixir in her mouth. "Why did you challenge Xiao So?" His voice was very strict, but Bailey Union could hear a trace of gentleness deep in his voice. She smiled and said, "Xiaofeng, in fact, I've always been envious of Hongzhuang. I've always envied her relationship with Beichen. Since I met you, you've always been protecting me and taking care of me. And I want to be like Hongzhuang. She can fight side by side with Beichen instead of watching from the back. I know I may not be able to do that now, but I will." Her clear almond eyes were filled with strong determination. Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but be moved by her determination. His gaze became gentler. "I believe in you. You're both girls from the Bailey family. You're both equally outstanding." Bailey Union smiled. Her delicate and gentle face was filled with joy and comfort. She remembered what Bailey Hongzhuang said to her when she was worried that she wasn't good enough for Di Xiaofeng. There was no such thing as unworthy. If he dared to like you, you would dare to be with him. If someone thinks that you are not worthy, then use your strength to tell them that you are worthy. You deserve her more than anyone else. She clearly remembered the shock she felt when Bailey Hongzhuang said those words. If everyone felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was unworthy, then when Bailey Hongzhuang first came to the upper realm, everyone thought that she was trying to climb up the social ladder. But she did it. Now, everyone thought that they were a match made in heaven. No one thought that they were not suitable for each other. Because of this, she believed that she could do it as well, and had been working hard for it. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were gentle. Previously, he had always felt that Bailey Union had ulterior motives, but one day, she suddenly became open-minded. Only now did he realize that something like this had happened. Xiao So covered her face with her hands, and her whole person fell into madness. As a woman, how important was her appearance? She had never thought that something like this would happen one day. Qing Devil looked at Xiao So, who was screaming hysterically, and a trace of impatience flashed in his eyes. This woman's cultivation was clearly not weaker than Bailey Hongzhuang's, but she still fell into such a situation. She was really too stupid. Chapter 58-57. The cultivators of the Xiao family had already rushed to Xiao Sou's side. Xiao Sudong was even more nervous and worried. "Sister, how are you?" My face, my face." Xiao So just kept repeating this sentence, from the initial nervousness to the later despair and helplessness. As a woman, she absolutely couldn't lose her face. Otherwise, she would become a complete joke, and Qing Devil would not like her anymore. Xiao Sudong pulled Xiao Sou's hands away, only to see that her fair and smooth face was covered with blood, looking miserable and pitiful. "Sudong, how is my face?" Xiao So looked at Xiao Sudong nervously, as if she was looking at her last life-saving straw. Seeing Xiao So's nervous look, Xiao Sudong couldn't bear it. He knew very well that his sister had always cared about her face very much. "Sister, don't worry. These wounds will be cured soon." "Really?" Xiao Sou's hope was rekindled, and she quickly took out the healing medicine and took it. She had been injured before, and even her face was not spared when she was in danger. However, she had never felt such pain before, so she was inexplicably a little flustered. "Brother-in-law, you must avenge my sister." Xiao Sudong looked at Jun Lingxuan with indignation in his eyes. "This woman is really vicious." The Azure Fiend didn't want to pay attention to Xiao Seiwu. How could he blame others for his own incompetence when he was in such a situation? Now listening to Xiao Sudong's words, he found a very good reason. Compared to facing the hysterical Xiao Sou, he would rather have a good fight with Di Xiaofeng. Di Xiaofeng noticed Qing Devil's gaze and immediately stepped forward to stand in front of Bailey Yunyan. Our competition is not over yet. The corner of Azure Fiend's lips curled up, and there was a hint of danger in his smile. Things between us aren't that simple. Unless you die, it won't end. His cold and gloomy words were full of killing intent. So far, Di Xiaofeng was the most powerful person he had met. However, he would still kill him. Looking at Di Xiaofeng's unstoppable momentum, everyone's eyes changed slightly. It seemed that after entering the ancient battlefield, Jun Lingxuan's momentum had become much stronger than before. At least in the past, Jun Lingxuan had never made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Then give it a try. The result may not be as you wish. Di Xiaofeng's expression was calm. He didn't care who the other party was, but it wasn't that easy to take his life. Compared with Qing Devil's imposing manner, Di Xiaofeng might be slightly inferior. But when everyone saw his pair of eyes that were as tough as black holes, they couldn't help but be shocked. Whether it was Di Beichun or Di Xiaofeng, they were not easy to deal with. If he wanted to take their lives, he had to be prepared to fight to the death. Xiaofeng, you must be careful. Bailey Yunyan looked at Di Xiaofeng worriedly. The Jun Lingxuan in front of her made her feel an unprecedented threat. Don't worry. Di Xiaofeng turned his head and smiled warmly at Bailey Yunyan. When he turned his head again, there was a trace of determination on his jade-like face. Even if he would die here today, he would do his best to kill Jun Lingxuan. He couldn't let this guy destroy the entire Di family. The atmosphere became solemn in an instant, and time seemed to stand still. Chapter 58-58. The terrifying collision made everyone hold their breaths and stare at the two people who were moving as fast as lightning. Streaks of terrifying strength exploded in the air, making loud sonic booms. Compared to the first confrontation, the two people were undoubtedly more intense this time. This time, the fight was like a violent storm with lightning flashing and thunder rumbling. The killing intent was so dense that it almost condensed into a substance, as if it could destroy everything at any time. In terms of cultivation, Di Xiaofeng was a level higher than Qing Devil. Although Qing Devil was only at level 1 of the Radiant Moon Realm, her fighting strength was able to suppress the gap between their levels. Bang! 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 The terrifying strength shot out. If one was careless, one would be pierced through by the strength. Di Xiaofeng's expression was cold and heavy. Logically speaking, with his advantage in cultivation, he should be able to suppress Azure Demon. However, Azure Demon's spiritual energy was suppressing his spiritual energy from time to time, so his senses were slightly dulled. Under such circumstances, he had to be very careful. Otherwise, he would lose his life if he was careless. This inexplicable suppression was very uncomfortable. The most annoying thing was that Qing Devil was obviously good at this kind of method. Sometimes she suppressed, and sometimes she relaxed, so Di Xiaofeng had to concentrate. This was going to be a tough fight. When people noticed that Di Xiaofeng, who had a higher cultivation, was suppressed by Qing Devil, they were even more shocked. They had never known that Jun Lingxuan had such a fighting strength. If he had been able to do this before, he would not have been suppressed by Di Beichun all the time. Only Nangong Yuqing looked at the scene seriously. He had thought that Di Beichun was lying to him. However, at this moment, he suddenly realized that Di Beichun was probably telling the truth. Jun Lingxuan was really possessed. Although there were many questions that people couldn't figure out, he was sure that it was true. Suddenly, people felt a terrifying and powerful aura of metal property appear. The whole world seemed to be in a sword formation. The sharp sword Qi made people's hair stand on end. Thousands of sharp swords appeared around Qing Devil. The sharp swords kept spinning, and the golden sword light was even more dazzling than the sun. The sharp sword energy made people tremble. Looking at the sword formation before him, Di Xiaofeng felt the threat of death in his heart. The power of this move was absolutely terrifying. If he couldn't break this move, he would definitely die here today. He slowly turned around and looked at the familiar yellow figure. Then, he looked at the cultivators from the Bailey family. A vicious look flashed across his deep eyes. He had no way out. Once he retreated, he would be unable to protect the people behind him. Qing Devil smiled coldly. The cultivators in the upper world didn't have enough control over the power of attributes. If Di Xiaofeng was also good at these things, then he would have lost today. Unfortunately, Di Xiaofeng hadn't mastered these methods yet. Therefore, he would definitely die this time. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. Just by looking at the changes in their expressions, they could tell who was stronger. Xiao Seiwu looked at Di Xiaofeng with resentment. Right now, she felt incomparably disgusted with everyone in the Di clan. Only when these people died would she be happy. Xiaofeng, Bailey Yinyin called softly. Her watery almond eyes were vaguely moist. If you die, I'll accompany you. Di Xiaofeng smiled warmly. Under the sunlight, it was extremely dazzling. Chapter 58-59. When Di Xiaofeng firmly turned his gaze back, a crazy and bloodthirsty light climbed up his deep eyes. It was demonic and strange. Nine-tailed inferno fox. Di Xiaofeng shouted coldly, and a cold and terrifying aura suddenly erupted with him as the center. Suddenly, the wind whistled, and dark clouds covered the sun. The whole world darkened. Di Xiaofeng's hair fluttered, setting off his godlike handsome face. It was even more captivating and breathtaking. The surrounding temperature suddenly rose and became dry and hot. In almost a short time, everyone was sweating profusely. This temperature was much higher than when Di Xiaofeng had used his fire attribute. An extremely dazzling figure appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. The fiery red figure was burning with terrifying flames. Its 9 tails swayed in the air, enchanting and charming. However, its eyes were like black holes, emitting a heart-palpitating light. It was as if it could see into the depths of one's heart with a single glance, bringing endless pressure. Time seemed to have frozen for a moment. Everyone stared blankly at the 9-tailed inferno fox that suddenly appeared, and their eyes were filled with shock. What demonic beast is this? What a terrifying fire attribute. Could it be Di Xiaofeng's contract beast? Under this pressure, everyone found it difficult to even speak. The 9-tailed inferno fox was like a king, and no one dared to profane it. Qing Devil looked at the 9-tailed inferno fox that suddenly appeared in front of him, and his expression froze for a moment. You actually tamed the 9-tailed inferno fox? Di Xiaofeng's eyes were cold, and his voice was as cold as a glacier. You're not the only one with a trump card. With your cultivation, it's impossible to tame the 9-tailed inferno fox. Qing Devil frowned, and his heart was filled with shock. However, he had some understanding of a 9-tailed inferno fox. With a 9-tailed inferno fox's terrifying strength, how could a radiant moon realm cultivator tame it? All of a sudden, the Azure Fiend figured it out. You must have used the method of sacrifice to make it fight for you, right? Just like how he had stayed in this ancient battlefield for too many years, the 9-tailed inferno fox was the same. They were too lonely and didn't want to be imprisoned in this place forever. So what? Di Xiaofeng's expression was calm. A strange smile slowly appeared on his lips. You really aren't Jun Lingxuan. He wouldn't have such knowledge. When he first saw the 9-tailed inferno fox, he was filled with shock. The 9-tailed inferno fox was different from the demonic beasts he usually came into contact with. There had never been a 9-tailed inferno fox in the upper realm, so it was impossible for Jun Lingxuan to know. Following Di Xiaofeng's words, the way everyone looked at Jun Lingxuan suddenly changed. They had never even heard of the 9-tailed inferno fox, but Jun Lingxuan was able to determine what method Di Xiaofeng used to make the 9-tailed inferno fox attack. This in itself was very unusual. Qing Devil's face darkened. The appearance of the 9-tailed inferno fox really surprised him, so he didn't think about it for a while. Feeling that everyone was looking at him differently, He understood that this layer of disguise was meaningless. You tried so hard to expose me. Do you think I care? Qing Devil chuckled. I don't care about these at all. Compared to Jun Lingshuan's appearance, I prefer yours. Chapter 5860. He admitted it. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, he actually admitted it so calmly. Xiao Soa looked at Qing Devil in disbelief. They had agreed that as long as she was there, no one could expose Qing Devil's disguise. However, since the Azure Fiend had admitted to it, there was no way to turn the situation around. All the cultivators of the Jun family were dumbfounded. When they looked at Qing Devil again, their eyes were full of hatred. It turned out that the man in front of them was no longer their young master, but the one who killed him. How could this be? Xiao Sudong was also stunned. Recently, he had been wondering why Jun Lingshuan's cultivation had improved so much. However, after learning that Jun Lingshuan got an opportunity at the bottom of the lake, he put this doubt aside. However, who would have thought that all this was a disguise? The man in front of them was not Jun Lingshuan at all. Sister, do you know about this? Xiao Sudong grabbed Xiao Sou's arm, his face full of worry. He knew that his sister had finally found someone she liked, but now Jun Lingshuan was dead. How painful it must be for her. Xiao Sou had no time to care about the pain on her face at this moment. This sudden situation was beyond her expectation. For a moment, she didn't know how to answer at all. If she said that she knew, then everyone would look at her strangely. But if she said that she didn't know, then how could she be with Qing Devil? In her opinion, this situation was more complicated than the condition of her face. However, she had no way to deal with the man in front of her. She didn't even have the right to blame him. Looking at Xiao Sou's dull face, everyone thought that she didn't know about this matter, which made them even more shocked. Xiao Sou can't even recognize her own fiancé. Isn't this too exaggerated? If Jun Lingshuan knew all this, he would be depressed to death. If it wasn't for Di Xiaofeng exposing all of this, who knows when this secret would be known by others? Jun Lingshuan has become ridiculously strong recently. Normally, he wouldn't have such combat strength. Everyone finally understood. The problem that they couldn't figure out before was finally solved. So, from the beginning to the end, it wasn't the same person. Facing the domineering Qing Devil, Di Xiaofeng only smiled faintly. That depends on whether you have the ability to take it away. In the next instant, Di Xiaofeng turned his gaze to the nine-tailed Inferno Fox. Feeling Di Xiaofeng's gaze, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox turned its head, and its black hole-like eyes finally flashed with a trace of light. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox directly charged into Di Xiaofeng's body. In his line of sight, Di Xiaofeng's figure became even bigger, and his black hair turned into a dazzling red. His already tall and straight figure became even more muscular, and his terrifying aura was like that of a ferocious beast, causing one's heart to tremble. This feeling was like a demonic beast that had been sleeping for a long time, suddenly awakening, exuding a heart-palpitating power. The fiery red flames wrapped around his body, making him look like a flaming god of war. Gulp! Looking at Di Xiaofeng like this, everyone couldn't help but swallow their saliva. So terrifying. Just looking at Di Xiaofeng like this, they didn't even dare to think of fighting him. Chapter 5861. Nangong Yuqing, Xiao Sou, Xiao Sudong. Everyone looked at the flaming figure in shock. If Di Xiaofeng's opponent wasn't Jun Lingshuan but them, none of them would be able to escape this time. None of them would be Di Xiaofeng's opponent. Fusion martial technique. Qing Devil narrowed his eyes and put away his previous joking attitude. His expression was unprecedentedly serious. He knew how terrifying the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was. Even at his peak, he didn't dare to provoke it. Fortunately, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was also in a soul state. Otherwise, he wouldn't be its opponent. Qing Devil, I didn't expect you to be so lucky. The cold voice was unfamiliar and oppressive. At this moment, everyone felt as if there was a huge mountain pressing down on them. Even standing up straight was very difficult. Everyone's eyes fell on Di Xiaofeng. At this moment, Di Xiaofeng was completely different from his usual self. He emitted a coldness that spread from the bottom of his heart. His fiery red eyes were as magnificent and dazzling as fiery obsidian, but there was no emotion in them. I also didn't expect you to choose to be with a radiant moon realm cultivator, Qing Devil said slowly. Instead of following him, why don't you follow me? What do you think? Bailey Union's heart tightened. She didn't expect the nine-tailed Inferno Fox to know Qing Devil. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox was their opportunity. Di Xiaofeng tried his best to make the nine-tailed Inferno Fox form a contract with him. However, it wasn't a master-servant contract. It was just a simple contract. As long as the nine-tailed Inferno Fox didn't want to, it could be canceled at any time. Although they were helpless about this, they understood that they couldn't make the nine-tailed Inferno Fox submit with their strength. Even if they had to pay a price for the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's help, it was worth it as a life-saving trump card. However, if the nine-tailed Inferno Fox chose to be with Qing Devil, there was no room for negotiation. Qing Devil, you're not tempting to me. Instead of working with a guy like you, I'd rather work with this little guy. At the very least, others are much more honest and trustworthy than you. Qing Devil's face suddenly turned cold. So, you insist on fighting with me? You think you can threaten me? A dangerous aura flashed in his fiery red eyes. In the next moment, Di Xiaofeng moved. After the nine-tailed Inferno Fox entered his body, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was able to control his body. Of course, he could still control it with his consciousness. However, because the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was stronger than him, it was more dominant. Bang! Emperor Xiaofeng moved. His 2-meter-tall figure was as fast as lightning. He kicked Qing Devil directly. This time, Qing Devil couldn't dodge Di Xiaofeng's attack. His body fell heavily to the ground, but he quickly stood up again. It seems that you have yet to completely fuse with this body. Your cultivation has been restricted. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox's voice rang out. It's only a matter of time. Qing Devil stood up straight. At least I'm better than you. You don't even have a physical body. That's my business. I don't need your nonsense. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox said, since I've received benefits, I'll help him defeat you completely. Go to hell. Chapter 58-62. Bang, 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 bang. Emperor Xiaofeng's attack was as fast as thunder, landing on Qing Devil mercilessly. Even though they were just spectators, everyone could still hear the screeching sound. Bang! Qing Devil's figure was blown away again. A deep pit appeared on the ground. This time, the Azure Fiend stood up at a slower speed than before. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Qing Devil's face was extremely cold. Nine-tailed Inferno Fox, it seems that you're going to fight for real. Why don't you find your life weapon? Nine-tailed Inferno Fox sneered. If you don't find it, you'll die in my hands. Qing Devil snorted. Now that you've said so, we can only fight to the death. I'm not afraid of a fight to the death. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox's smile was unbridled and unbridled, with an imposing manner that was not afraid of anything. Qing Devil's eyes flashed with a touch of determination. In the next second, a vigorous aura burst out from his body. His hands suddenly turned over, and mysterious seals appeared quietly one by one. A horrible aura spread out, and the onlookers could not help but tremble, as if something was being summoned. The ground began to tremble at this moment. Everyone looked at the trembling ground, worried that it would collapse at any time. Zheng! A huge, deep pit suddenly appeared on the ground in front of Qing Devil, and a dazzling golden light flashed. The onlookers felt the ground suddenly shake, and then they found a golden halberd in the deep pit. This golden halberd did not have too many complicated decorations, but the horrible aura it released made people dare not ignore it. Emperor Xiaofeng's heart suddenly jumped when he saw this halberd. This halberd seemed to have been baptized by blood, and it was full of murderous intent, which was daunting. He could not help thinking of the tragic scene on the battlefield that he had seen before. Qing Devil should have been one of them. This halberd might have been summoned by him from the battlefield. Even if he didn't know everything, he could roughly guess. Back then, the Qing Devil died on the battlefield. Her soul was preserved only because she was lucky or she had some extraordinary treasures. It was only after he possessed Jun Lingxuan that he was reborn. Qing Devil lifted the long halberd with one hand, a trace of nostalgia flashing across her face. It was a familiar feeling. Everything was familiar. Back then, he had used this halberd to make a name for himself, but he had never thought that he would end up in such a desolate place and almost disappear along with history. You can make your move now. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox obviously wasn't in the mood to let Qing Devil reminisce about the past. She had already launched a fierce punch. Qing Devil held the long halberd as if he had found his soul. As he waved the long halberd, the terrifying energy rippled and blocked the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's attack. It was not until this moment that the crowd realized the real strength of Qing Devil. Compared to being beaten passively before, he could finally start a fight back now. The onlookers unconsciously retreated hundreds of meters. The horror of the battle in front of them was beyond their understanding. This kind of power was not something they could touch. If they were in this battlefield, they would have been pierced into sieves in a short time. Every attack was so terrifying. However, no one left. Chapter 58-63. The power of fire and metal kept colliding with each other, and the power of each attack was enough to cover the sky and cover the sun. For a moment, there was only red and gold in everyone's eyes, nothing else. Xiao Sou stared blankly at the Qing Devil who was like a god of war, and her eyes couldn't help but reveal an infatuated look. Only a peerless hero like him was the one she admired. A trace of madness flashed in her eyes. As long as she could be with the Qing Devil, she didn't care whether the Qing Devil was the one who killed Jun Lingxuan or not. Even if the Jun family didn't accept the Qing Devil, the Xiao family's strength would be greatly improved if he joined the Xiao family. At that time, even without the Jun family, she would be fearless. Di Xiaofeng and the Qing Devil were fighting fiercely. Even if the Qing Devil's fighting strength had soared after obtaining the natal weapon, he could still feel that the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's strength was stronger than the Qing Devil's. Now the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was just in a soul state. It was hard to imagine how powerful the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was in its heyday. Boom! The power of fire whizzed past, and the Qing Devil was directly pressed under the giant tiger formed by the fire. Qing Devil, you are no match for me. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox showed a disdainful look. The Qing Devil was indeed a good existence among human cultivators, but he was not qualified to deal with her. The Qing Devil's face turned ugly. There is no conflict between you and me. Why do you have to help him? Everyone has their own opportunities. I made a deal with him first. Speaking of which, you should be the one who is strange. Why do you have to make trouble for us? The nine-tailed Inferno Fox's voice was extremely cold. In this case, I can only kill you. Anyway, you should have died long ago. In the next moment, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox attacked again and crushed the Qing Devil without hesitation. Everyone widened their eyes. They didn't expect such an ending. For a moment, everyone couldn't help but envy Di Xiaofeng. Although they didn't know what price Di Xiaofeng paid for the nine-tailed Inferno Fox to help him, with such a life-saving trump card, ordinary people wouldn't dare to go against him. Otherwise, no one would be a match for the nine-tailed Inferno Fox. However, the moment he attacked, Di Xiaofeng's movement paused for a moment. Brother, it's me. In his line of sight, the Azure Devil who had fallen to the ground had unknowingly become Di Beichun. Di Xiaofeng's eyes flashed with confusion. Beichun, what are you doing here? When everyone realized that Di Xiaofeng actually called Azure Demon Beichun, they were all stunned. What was going on? Why did Xiaofeng's Qing's? Azure Demon, you still like to use this method to confuse people. The nine-tailed inferno foxes inferno no to the ding, 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 the ching at the ding, 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 ding. The ching, however, in that short period of time, Azure Demon's figure had already fled at top speed. Xiao Sou and the others left quickly after seeing this scene. Without the Qing Devil, the nine-tailed Inferno Fox could kill them as easily as killing a fly. This guy is really cunning. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox frowned. The reason why the Qing Devil could escape was because of this trick. Even if they could see through the illusion for existences with their strength, even a short moment was enough for them to escape. Chapter 58-64. There's no need. Di Xiaofeng shook his head. After understanding Qing Devil strength, he also understood that it was not easy to kill this person. What's more, he had to pay a price for the nine-tailed Inferno Fox to enter his body. The longer it took, the greater the price. If he couldn't catch up with Qing Devil, wouldn't it be terrible? Hearing Di Xiaofeng's words, a trace of disappointment flashed in the nine-tailed Inferno Fox's eyes. In the next second, it retreated from Di Xiaofeng's body. Everyone looked at the powerful fiery red figure in front of them and couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts. Such a demonic beast was simply an existence that people looked up to. From now on, they were afraid that none of them would be Di Xiaofeng's opponent. Di Xiaofeng just glanced at everyone coldly. Everyone was nervous and didn't dare to stay here any longer and left one after another. However, everyone was guessing in their hearts. What price did Di Xiaofeng pay to get the nine-tailed Inferno Fox to help? After everyone left, Di Xiaofeng sat on the ground weakly. There was a burning pain in his body. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox's flame was different from ordinary flames. In addition, they were not in a contractual relationship. Just entering his body for a short time had already exceeded his load. You know very well the price you need to pay. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox faintly left a sentence and disappeared from everyone's sight. Bailey Yinyan immediately ran to Di Xiaofeng's side. Looking at the latter's pale face, her pretty face was filled with worry. Xiaofeng, how are you? Di Xiaofeng opened his mouth, but didn't even have time to say a word before he fainted. Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng. Bailey Yinyan called nervously, but Di Xiaofeng was obviously extremely tired and couldn't wake up at all. Bailey Yinyan took out an elixir from a storage ring and put it into Di Xiaofeng's mouth. Then she looked at the people behind her and said, "We'll stay here for the time being and guard Xiaofeng well." The cultivators of the Bailey family nodded. The previous scene kept replaying in their minds and couldn't be forgotten for a long time. That was a real powerhouse. That was the power they pursued. However, the unconscious man in front of them was their hero. If it wasn't for Di Xiaofeng blocking all of this, their heads would have already been separated from their bodies. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who were cultivating saw a golden light suddenly sweep across the sky, their faces revealed astonishment. What was that flash of golden light just now? Jiang Wenyan revealed a look of surprise. That ray of light was really too dazzling, and when it passed by, it lit up the entire area around them. Di Beichen's handsome face revealed that he was deep in thought. I felt an extremely powerful metal attribute aura from that golden light, but I don't know what it is. The aura just now was very powerful, and it doesn't seem to be very far from us. Linger muttered, "I think it's a weapon, but other than the cultivators from the ancient battlefield, no one else should be able to use that weapon." As Linger's voice fell, everyone looked at each other, and a guess suddenly appeared in their minds. Could it be the Qing Devil? Bailey Hongzhuang rolled her eyes, and a terrible idea came to her mind. Chapter 58-65. Should we go and take a look? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun with a worried expression on her delicate face. They were naturally unwilling to see the Qing Devil. However, they had yet to find Di Xiaofeng. Now that the Qing Devil had suddenly summoned his weapon, it was very likely that he had met his match. No matter who the opponent was, as long as it was the Qing Devil's opponent, it would be their friend. This might be an opportunity for them. Di Beichun nodded and jumped out of the Luais. With a solemn expression, he said, "Let's go." Bai Yin Che, Jiang Wenyin, and the rest quickly left the Luais. They had to go and take a look at the current situation. "Don't worry. Stay here for the time being." Noticing that the other cultivators were preparing to come out, Bailey Hongzhuang reminded them. They had already seen the Qing Devil's strength. He was stronger than them. If they were to bring the team forward at this time, it was very likely that everyone would be in danger. Rather than that, they might as well go and take a look. If there was danger, they could escape faster. The cultivators of the Great Devil Sect and the Murong family were stunned. After seeing Chun Feng and Murong Jing nod, they entered the Luais again. Everyone walked forward. As a beast king, Bai Yin Che was extremely sensitive to auras. Even if the golden light had disappeared for a while, he could still find traces of it. However, as they got closer and closer to their destination, Bai Yin Che's expression became more and more solemn. "I can feel the aura of a nine-tailed inferno fox." Ling O's expression changed. "I didn't expect that there would be a nine-tailed inferno fox in the ancient battlefield. Moreover, this is not a young fox. It is an adult nine-tailed inferno fox. How is this possible?" Ling Er's gaze suddenly focused, and her expression became unprecedentedly solemn. "The killing power of an adult nine-tailed inferno fox is extremely terrifying. All the cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield are not its match. Could it be that the Qing Devil suddenly summoned his weapon to deal with this nine-tailed inferno fox?" Chen Feng could not help but ask, "What's a nine-tailed inferno fox?" He had never heard of the nine-tailed inferno fox. The nine-tailed inferno fox is an extremely powerful race. The nine-tailed fox race has always been a mysterious existence. However, they're the same as our dragon race and rarely appear in front of everyone. An adult nine-tailed fox, I'm afraid that even Grandma Hua may not be able to defeat it. Bailey Yinche turned his gaze to Bailey Hongzhuang. If Bailey Hongzhuang did not know much about the nine-tailed inferno fox before, she understood when she heard the last sentence. He was comparable to Granny Flower, or even more powerful than her. Not to mention the cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield. Even in the entire upper realm, there was probably no one who could deal with it. Such a terrifying person was indeed a disaster. "Yin Che, aren't you a beast king? Is your strength comparable to this guy?" Murong Jing asked doubtfully. From his understanding, the beast king should be the strongest existence among the demonic beasts. Although he had never heard of this nine-tailed inferno fox before, and the various situations that he came into contact with now frequently refresh his understanding, he still felt that this should not be wrong, right? This nine-tailed inferno fox is an adult demonic beast. I'm still not an adult yet. If I become an adult, it won't be my match. A trace of pride flashed in by Li Yin Che's eyes. He was a beast king, the king of all beasts. Chapter 58-66. Hearing Bai Yin Che's words, everyone's eyes flashed with amazement. Sure enough, the Beast King was the most powerful existence. Considering the long lifespan of a monster beast, the current Bai Yin Che was still too young. When he reaches adulthood, he will definitely be extremely terrifying. This nine-tailed inferno fox doesn't seem to be in its peak state. Linger, since the temperature in the air, I've encountered a nine-tailed inferno fox before. A nine-tailed inferno fox in its peak state is no small matter. Although its aura is also very strong, there is still a gap between it and the nine-tailed inferno fox I encountered before. Bai Yin Che nodded. I also noticed it. Perhaps it is also injured, or it is also in a soul state. Everyone looked at Bai Yin Che and Ling Er's tacit understanding and stared at each other. In fact, they weren't as perceptive as Bai Yin Che and Ling Er. In addition, they didn't know anything about the nine-tailed inferno fox, so they could only listen. No matter what the reason is, it's not bad news for us. Di Bei Chen's eyebrows were slightly raised, and his heroic face was cold and stern. The Qing Devil was their number one enemy. If the nine-tailed inferno fox could kill the Qing Devil, they would reap the benefits. But if they couldn't deal with it, Even if the Qing devil was injured, they would still be happy to see it. Everyone approached at their fastest speed, but on the way, they encountered Nangong Yuqing. Seeing Di Beichun and the others suddenly appear, Nangong Yuqing was stunned, and his mood became extremely complicated. Di Beichun coldly glanced at Nangong Yuqing. With just a cold look, Nangong Yuqing quickly said, "Di Beichun, I have no intention of fighting with you right now. Your big brother is injured over there. Quickly go and take a look." Hearing this, Di Beichun's heart tightened. He didn't have the heart to pay attention to Nangong Yuqing and disappeared without a trace. Bailey Yunyan was guarding Di Xiaofeng. Looking at the latter's pale face, her heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. Originally, they thought that with Di Xiaofeng's current strength, it wouldn't be a problem to deal with Jun Lingxuan. Who would have thought that Jun Lingxuan would become a Qing devil, which made things even more troublesome? At this moment, she suddenly felt several auras approaching from behind, and her heart couldn't help but tighten. Who is it, Yunyan? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bailey Yunyan in surprise. "I've finally found you." Bailey Yunyan smiled happily when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang. "Hongzhuang, it's great to see you." After a short moment of surprise, Di Beichun noticed Di Xiaofeng lying on the ground. His eyes suddenly darkened. "What happened? Who hurt Big Brother?" "Earlier, we encountered the Qing devil and had a big battle. The Qing devil escaped, and Xiaofeng was seriously injured." Bailey Yunyan looked worried. Even now, Di Xiaofeng still didn't show any signs of waking up. "Let me take a look." Bailey Hongzhuang quickly stepped forward and took his pulse. After taking his pulse, her eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. What a terrifying fire attribute aura. Big Brother's body is filled with this aura. "What's going on?" Bailey Yunyan immediately explained everything that had happened. Only then did everyone understand what had happened. So that's how it is. Di Beichun understood and couldn't help but exclaim in his heart, "I didn't expect that the nine-tailed inferno fox was summoned by Big Brother." Chapter 58-67. Although Morong Jing and the others did not see the true appearance of the nine-tailed inferno fox, just from the fire attribute aura left in the air and the situation described by Li Yin Che, they knew that Di Xiaofeng had obtained a great opportunity. Although the nine-tailed inferno fox did not really form a contract with him, there was always a certain contractual relationship. If he could make the nine-tailed inferno fox his contracted beast in the future, then his strength would soar like never before, and he would become an existence that no one could ignore. "Hongzhuang, how is Xiaofeng now?" Bailey Yunyan's face was filled with nervousness and worry. Although she already knew that summoning the nine-tailed inferno fox to fight had a price, seeing Di Xiaofeng's unresponsive appearance at this moment, she could not help but worry. Big Brother's current physical condition is indeed very bad, because his own energy is not enough to withstand the strength of the nine-tailed inferno fox. His body was injured in the process of the battle. Not only that, I also noticed that Big Brother's cultivation seems to have dropped. If I'm not wrong, he should only be in the second level of the Radiant Moon. When these words came out, everyone was stunned. They had clearly heard Bailey Yunyan say that Xiaofeng's strength was in the third level of the Radiant Moon. How did it drop to the second level of the Radiant Moon in such a short time? Bailey Yunyan's expression changed. Perhaps this drop in strength is the price. Previously, she only knew that there was a price, but Di Xiaofeng did not mention it to her. What was the real price? What's more, according to their original judgment, they did not think of asking the nine-tailed inferno fox to help at all. They did not expect to encounter the Qing devil, who used their trump card so quickly. This is not strange. The nine-tailed inferno fox is only in a soul state. It needs to increase its own strength. Presumably, the strength that Big Brother lost was absorbed by it. Li Yin Che slowly said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She also felt that this possibility was very high. Then why hasn't Xiaofeng woken up yet? His body has never withstood such an impact before. He can't accept it for a while, so he fell into a state of self-protection. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. It seemed that the strength of a nine-tailed inferno fox was really terrifying. Even in a soul state, it still brought a lot of injuries to Di Xiaofeng. You don't have to worry too much. Although Big Brother's injuries are very serious, he should wake up after a few days of rest after taking the healing medicine. According to my judgment, his body will not be able to use essence energy for at least a month. As Bailey Hongzhuang finished speaking, everyone was stunned. Originally, he thought that the price to pay for his cultivation to fall back by one stage was a huge price to pay, but he didn't think that there would be such a side effect. After reaching the Radiant Moon realm, it was extremely difficult to break through one level. Now that he had regressed by one level, it would take a lot of time for him to break through again. From the looks of it, Big Brother's injuries are very serious, Di Beichun said in a deep voice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. It's indeed quite serious. His meridians have been burned by the fire attribute energy, and it'll take some time for him to recover. In this 1 month, we have to protect Big Brother well. I understand. Bailey Hongzhuang specially refined a cauldron of pills for Di Xiaofeng's injuries. After feeding him, everyone sat down to rest. Chapter 58-68. 3 days later, Di Xiaofeng slowly woke up. He only moved a little. Di Xiaofeng felt pain all over his body. Xiaofeng, you're awake. Bailey Yunyan immediately noticed Di Xiaofeng's slight movement and immediately went to his side. The others all turned their gazes after hearing Bailey Yunyan's words. Sure enough, Di Xiaofeng had already opened his eyes. When Di Xiaofeng noticed Di Beichun's group beside him, his expression was clearly dazed for a moment, but it quickly turned into a deep surprise. Di Beichun, when did you guys come? He spoke very slowly because his injuries hadn't healed yet. From his slightly furrowed brows, it could be seen that he was in pain. However, this clearly couldn't hide his happiness when he saw Di Beichun. We rushed over after noticing the aura here, but when we arrived, you were already unconscious. Di Beichun walked to Di Xiaofeng's side and sat down. Big Brother, how do you feel now? Di Xiaofeng's lips curved up. Don't worry, as long as I'm still breathing, I'll be fine. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's nonchalant expression, Di Beichun's face revealed a trace of seriousness. Big Brother, this kind of thing can't be ignored. If something happens to you, what will happen to father and mother? Moreover, you still have Yunyan to take care of. Di Xiaofeng's eyes flashed. Aren't I still alive? It's all in the past. You don't have to worry about me. Big Brother, you should have some understanding of your body's current situation, right? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. According to my diagnosis and treatment, you can't use elemental energy for the next month. Because your meridians are damaged, you can't withstand the flow of spirit energy for the time being. You can't even cultivate spirit energy, so you have to carefully control yourself and don't force yourself to cultivate. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. I know this. The nine-tailed inferno fox already told me this. Bailey Hongzhuang let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that the nine-tailed inferno fox was very sincere to Di Xiaofeng. She had already explained everything clearly. This is really beyond my expectation. How could Jun Lingxuan be possessed by the Qing devil? Thinking of the current situation, Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but worry. It's a long story. I really regret not stopping Jun Lingxuan back then. Di Beichun sighed. Although he didn't like Jun Lingxuan at all, their situation was even worse now that he had become the Qing devil. Bailey Hongzhuang put a hand on Di Beichun's shoulder and comforted him. We tried to persuade him, but he didn't listen to us. Now that things have come to this, you don't have to take it to heart. We will find a way to deal with him. That's right, Di Xiaofeng agreed. This time, the Qing devil was injured and fled. He probably won't dare to take the initiative to find trouble with us for a while. What's more, now that his true identity has been exposed, the cultivators of the Jun family shouldn't accept him anymore. Everyone looked at each other. In the current situation, the possibility of the Qing devil immediately coming to find them was indeed very small. By the way, Big Brother, did you see any clues between Xiao Sou and the Qing devil? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly thought of this question and immediately asked. Chapter 58-69. Di Xiaofeng carefully recalled the previous situation and turned to look at Bailey Yunyin. Yunyin, as a woman, you should be more sensitive than me in this regard. What do you think? I also feel that this is very strange. Bailey Yunyin nodded. Before the Qing devil's identity was exposed, Xiao Sou and he were very affectionate, and it was a kind of love from the bottom of her heart. I could tell from her eyes. Because I didn't expect Jun Lingxuan to be possessed, I thought it was normal at that time. But after the Qing devil's identity was exposed, the cultivators of the Xiao family and the Jun family were very angry. At that moment, I noticed the change in Xiao Sou's expression. She was a little nervous and a little worried, but more than that, she didn't know what to do, but there was no hatred. Bailey Yunyin said with certainty, I can guarantee that I didn't see wrong. At that time, I felt that Xiao Sou's expression was very strange, and when Xiao Sudong asked her, she didn't know how to answer at that time. So I think she might have known that Jun Lingxuan was the Qing devil long ago, and she fell in love with the Qing devil. When she said the last sentence, Bailey Yunyin's tone became even more serious, showing her certainty. As soon as she said this, everyone looked at each other. This situation was really a little surprising. Originally, this was what they did not understand the most. However, if Xiao Sou fell in love with the Azure Demon just like that, it would be too fast for her to fall in love with someone else. I have the same idea as Yunyin. At that time, I also noticed Xiao Sou's expression. Although it seems a little unbelievable, and I don't understand how it happened, it is indeed the case for now. Di Xiaofeng said, I've long said that Xiao Sou was fickle. If Jun Lingxuan knew all this, he would think that he was blind. Xiao Hei's voice was full of disdain and disgust. He really couldn't imagine that Xiao Sou fell in love with someone so quickly. Moreover, that person was the enemy who had killed her fiancé. I find it hard to imagine as well, but such people do exist. Linger raised her eyebrows slightly, and there was a trace of disdain on her cold face. Some women are born to worship the strong. Qing devil strength is enough to crush all the cultivators from the upper world. If she can be with Qing devil, her status will be greatly improved. It's not strange that she would make such a choice. Big sister, this kind of situation does exist. This kind of thing often happens in our demonic beast world, Bailey Yin-che said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed inwardly, but she soon became clear-headed again. Everyone has their own choices, but I wonder if Xiao Sou will still be with Qing Devil. Everyone looked at each other. It was really hard to say. If Qing Devil's identity wasn't exposed, then Xiao Sou could be with him legitimately. Now that everything was exposed, Qing Devil had the title of an enemy. If Xiao Sou was still with him, she would inevitably be despised by everyone. With her arrogance, she really didn't know how to choose in this situation. Chapter 58-70. When everyone heard Bewitching's words, they all had different guesses. If it was an ordinary person, they would be able to confirm it. But the other party was Xiao Sou. Everything she did now already showed how strange she was. Big brother, you just woke up and your body hasn't recovered yet. Don't talk and have a good rest. Di Beichun said with concern. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. I've implicated you all to stay here. What are you talking about? Di Beichun frowned. There aren't any treasures in this ancient battlefield. Isn't everyone cultivating anywhere? Just focus on recuperating. Bailey Hongzhuang handed the medicine in her hand to Di Xiaofeng. Big brother, this is a pill I refined according to your injuries. Take it every day and it will speed up your recovery. Di Xiaofeng took the pill in surprise and revealed a joyful smile. It's so good to have an alchemist sister-in-law. She even specially prepared pills for me. I won't say thank you since we're family. I'm relieved to see you like this. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. She really didn't know much about the nine-tailed inferno fox, so she couldn't help but worry before Di Xiaofeng woke up. But now that she saw how Di Xiaofeng could talk and laugh, she knew that the nine-tailed Inferno Fox had only absorbed one stage of his cultivation. Other than that, it didn't do anything else. After staying here for a few more days, Di Xiaofeng had already recovered his mobility. Everyone then walked towards the Thunder Lake. In the Thunder Lake, the cultivators were still the same. Previously, because they were afraid that everyone would be worried about them, Murong Jing specially came back. After telling everyone that everything was fine, they continued to cultivate in an orderly manner. I didn't expect there to be a Thunder Lake here. Di Xiaofeng looked at the vast Thunder Lake in front of him, and a look of surprise flashed across his handsome face. The Thunder Pond was a rare sight, and for lightning-type cultivators, it was indeed a good place to cultivate. Previously, Yinju had been cultivating here. We just happened to come here and met Yinju. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. Yinju is of the lightning attribute. It's best for him to cultivate here. Then, Di Xiaofeng looked at the eager people behind him and smiled. You don't have to worry about me. I'll just rest here. You can all go and cultivate. As soon as these words came out, the cultivators of the Bailey family all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and smiled. Go ahead, but remember not to go too deep into the lightning lake. Not only is the lightning tempering dangerous, it's also very uncomfortable. You must be careful. Yes, Patriarch. Lin Xianxian and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that Emperor Xiaofeng had returned safely. Xiaofeng, we've finally met. I've heard about you guys before, but I couldn't find you even after searching for a long time. It's really frustrating. The ancient battlefield is too big. I first arrived at a place of inheritance and obtained some opportunities. Later on, I met other cultivators. I won't say much about the process. Anyway, I've met up with you guys now. Lin Taxing's face was filled with a warm smile. Now that we've all gathered together, we don't have to worry even if we meet the Xiao and Jun families' teams again. Chapter 58-71. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned to the Thunder Lake again. Even though they didn't stay here for long, their physical strength had improved a lot. Di Xiaofeng couldn't use his elemental energy, so he had been resting on the side. However, he wasn't alone. Many cultivators couldn't bear the pain of being tempered by thunder and lightning, so they left the Thunder Lake. While he couldn't cultivate, Di Xiaofeng decided to study the use of fire elemental energy. In the past, he had spent most of his energy on cultivation, so he had not studied this properly. After the battle with Qing Devil, he suddenly realized that he needed to spend more time studying the combat skills. As long as he mastered the combat skills, his combat power would be greatly improved. Just like Qing Devil, who was only at level 1 of the Radiant Moon, could compete with him. Of course, he knew that it was because Jun Lingxuan had a very powerful soul in his body, but it also proved that people with the same level of cultivation could have a stronger combat power. When he saw Beiqin and Hongzhuang's ability to fight above their level, he always thought that it was because they had the inheritance of the Blood Refining Tower and the Demon Refining Tower. But this time, he faced up to it. It turned out that it wasn't like that. As long as one worked hard, anyone could fight above their level. It just required more energy. Since he couldn't use his elemental energy now, he couldn't waste his time like this. It would be good if he could make some progress in the study. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes. The power of thunder and lightning flowed in her body. The burning pain and the numbness after the thunder and lightning were very uncomfortable, but she didn't care. From Bailey Yunyan's previous narration, she understood that Xiao Se Wu's strength had improved a lot compared to before. She didn't know if Qing Devil had Xiao Sou in his heart, but she could see that their relationship was not simple from the fact that he was willing to teach Xiao Sou. Now that Xiao Sou had improved, she couldn't stay stagnant. Time passed slowly. When the thunder and lightning fell on Bailey Hongzhuang again, she could directly ignore it. Her body was constantly getting stronger, and her immunity to thunder and lightning was also increasing. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang's body had a jade color, just like jade. Ordinary attacks couldn't hurt her. Feeling the improvement, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile. Although they didn't gain much from the ancient battlefield this time, and the inheritance didn't belong to them, it was still a great help to them. Right at this moment, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The entire world began to shake. Noticing this, everyone exited their cultivation state and looked at the sudden change in shock. What's going on? Is the ancient battlefield closing? Lin's and Lin and there's ants, and they didn't know when they could leave the ancient battlefield. In fact, until now, they still didn't know when the ancient battlefield would close. Most importantly, they didn't even know where the exit was. In their line of sight, an extreme darkness appeared. The whole sky seemed to be pressed down, making everyone breathless. Chapter 5872. It was pitch black. Everyone felt as if they were in a black hole, and they couldn't even see the people around them. Beichin, are you there? Bailey Hongzhuang called out nervously. This sudden situation was too nerve-wracking. They had no idea what was going on. At this moment, a pair of hands appeared behind Bailey Hongzhuang, and in the next second, she fell into a warm embrace. Feeling that familiar aura, Bailey Hongzhuang felt relieved. This was Di Beichin's embrace, and it was always warm and comfortable. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head gently, and her hands covered Di Beichin's broad and strong hands. Her initial nervousness gradually dissipated. As long as Di Beichin was by her side, she felt very relieved. The other cultivators also fell into a panic. This was the first time they had seen such a scene. Everything in front of them was like the end of the world, and no one knew if they would be swallowed by this boundless darkness in the next second. Nervous screams continued to resound, and everyone's minds were in a mess. Everyone calm down. Don't be nervous. Di Beichin's voice rang out. Try to meet up with the people around you. Something must have happened in this ancient battlefield to cause such a phenomenon. Be patient and wait. His magnetic and gentle voice was like a tranquilizer, making everyone feel a little more at ease. Everyone gathered together one after another. Even if there was any danger, they would be able to deal with it immediately. Beichin, I can feel that the dark aura in the air is very strong. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Originally, she didn't notice when this scene appeared, but as the darkness shrouded everything, she realized that there was dark energy all around her. The demon's summoning scripture was activated subconsciously, and the dark energy flowed into her body continuously through her meridians. Not bad. The dark energy here is terrifyingly rich. Di Beichin tightly grasped Bailey Hongzhuang's soft little hand. His heavenly mandate physique was fully activated, and the surrounding dark energy was rapidly absorbed into his body. Normally, cultivating would not be so convenient and fast. The most peculiar thing was that this dark energy was very pure. He did not need to purify it to absorb it all. This feeling was akin to being surrounded by blood spirit stones. He didn't even need to channel his merit law to fully display the terror of a heaven's mandate physique. For a moment, everyone could feel that there was a terrifying attractive force at the location of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichin. It was like a magnet, and the speed of absorption was extremely terrifying. If it weren't for the darkness, everyone would have discovered that a vortex had already appeared around Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichin. All of the dark energy continued to pour into his body. The speed at which it was being absorbed was simply shocking. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Lianche were also in such an environment. The dark energy might be very oppressive and terrifying to others, but to them, it was a great tonic. Dense joy appeared on the faces of Huang Futing and the other darkness attribute cultivators. As darkness attribute cultivators, they had to be extremely careful even when using darkness attribute energy, so they'd never been able to absorb darkness attribute energy without the slightest scruple like they were doing right now. But now, they didn't need to care about any of this at all. They just needed to let go of everything and absorb it. Chapter 5873. Bang! Everyone heard a terrifying aura. Immediately after, they noticed that Bewitching had broken through while being enveloped by this dark energy. Radiant Moon, Level 1. Di Xiaofeng's lips curled up in joy. After waiting for so long, Bewitching had finally broken through. Long before entering the ancient battlefield, Bewitching had told him not to rush into breaking through to the Radiant Moon realm. Therefore, he had always known that Bewitching had been suppressing his cultivation, which was why he hadn't broken through. However, it was clear that under the dense, dark energy, he had broken through directly. If he hadn't understood the meaning behind Bewitching's words previously, after witnessing this scene, he understood. That was because the commotion caused by Bewitching's breakthrough was much greater than the commotion caused by a regular cultivator breaking through to the Radiant Moon realm. Even from such a distance, he could still feel that terrifying aura. However, right after that voice was heard, another similar aura was heard. Bailey Hongzhuang had broken through as well. Nobody found Bewitching's breakthrough strange, as he was originally a darkness attribute cultivator. However, wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang the Radiant Saintess? Why had she broken through in such an environment? Chun Feng, Murong Jing, and Jiang Wenyan were all dumbstruck. At present, only the dark energy was left in the air. The other elements were simply undetectable. How had Bailey Hongzhuang broken through in such a situation? This was too weird. Only Di Xiaofeng and those who were aware that Bailey Hongzhuang was a dual attribute cultivator understood how she had been able to break through to this stage. Perhaps this was the advantage of dual attribute cultivators. During cultivation, it was not limited to one type of energy. Instead, it was possible to absorb both types of energy. This did not seem like a big deal. However, after a long time, the difference would be obvious. Bang, bang, bang. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Li Yanxie broke through one after another in such an environment. They had only been a hair's breadth away from breaking through to the Radiant Moon realm. Now, with this opportunity, they had all broken through. They actually managed to break through under such circumstances. I'm almost suffocated by this dark aura, but they can still break through. They're really amazing. The Saintess of the Light is really extraordinary. I really don't understand how she did it. Everyone was secretly speechless. This situation was really too strange. However, given the current situation, everyone was worried about when the darkness would pass, so they didn't pay too much attention to this matter. After all, when one was in danger, many problems would be neglected. While everyone was nervous, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were extremely relaxed. The power of darkness would give others an indescribable sense of oppression, making it hard for them to breathe. However, they were like fish in water in the darkness. When Bailey Hongzhuang first awakened her elemental talent, she didn't understand why darkness and light were the two strongest elemental talents. It was only later that she finally understood. This was because the other attributes might not be present in all environments, but light and darkness were definitely present. As long as it was daytime, there would always be light. Even if it was night, as long as there was light, whether it was fire or lamplight, light would be everywhere. As for darkness, regardless of whether it was night or day, darkness would always exist. Therefore, they were not limited by other attributes. Chapter 58-74. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would not let go of such a good cultivation environment. After realizing that other than the darkness that enveloped them, there was no other danger, everyone gathered all their strength to absorb the energy. At this moment, their cultivation speed was 10 times or even 100 times faster than usual. They even hoped that they could stay in the darkness forever. It would not take too long, just a few days, for their cultivation to improve rapidly. Boom! Another sound was heard. Everyone was shocked to find that Bewitching had broken through again. Level 2 Radiant Moon. At this moment, everyone was stunned. No matter how strong the dark energy was, how could someone who had just broken through to level 1 Radiant Moon could break through to level 2 Radiant Moon so quickly? However, before everyone could recover from the shock, Another sound of a breakthrough was heard. Bailey Hongzhuang had also broken through to level 2 Radiant Moon. Even though they could not see their fingers, everyone could not help but look in the direction of Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang. If Bailey Hongzhuang's previous breakthrough could be attributed to luck, then what was the situation now? I feel like I have never understood how powerful the light element is. A cultivator could not help but sigh. There are so few light element cultivators. Moreover, Miss Bailey is the saint of the light. Perhaps her cultivation method is not something we can touch. Everyone nodded, although they did not understand how she did it. This might be the strength of the saint of the light. Di Xiaofeng listened to everyone's half-understanding judgment and could not help but want to laugh. If everyone knew that Beiqin and Hongzhuang were both dual-element cultivators, they would be shocked. They only hoped that the darkness could last longer and Beiqin and the others could improve their strength. Then, the Qing Devil would be less of a threat to them. Bai Yanche, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai did not fall behind at all. They followed closely behind the two and began to break through. As a Beast King, Bai Yanche's cultivation talent was not inferior to anyone's. From the moment he broke through to the Radiant Moon realm, he sensed that there was an additional inheritance in his mind. He understood that this was the inheritance that the previous Beast King had sealed in his mind. It was an inheritance that belonged exclusively to the Beast King. There was only one Beast King in the world. Only when the previous Beast King was about to fall would the next Beast King be born. The Beast King was the strongest existence among the demonic beasts. Naturally, it had its own inheritance, which was sealed in the mind of every Beast King. When one's cultivation reached a certain level, they would receive some inheritances, which were the most suitable cultivation method for them. As for Xiao He and Xiao Bai, after they merged into one, they seemed to have opened up their conception and governing vessels. Their talents had increased a lot, and they were even more hard-working in their cultivation. After all, the scene of them almost leaving their master was still etched in their hearts. It was too painful. There was only one way to prevent that kind of pain from happening, and that was to increase his strength. If there were only a few of them, it would be fine. However, they then noticed that many other cultivators were breaking through. At this moment, they realized that there were quite a number of darkness attribute cultivators in their group. Apart from being amazed, everyone was also a little envious. If it were other elements, they would definitely be able to take this opportunity to break through quickly. Chapter 5875. The appearance of this darkness exceeded everyone's expectations. It did not disappear immediately, but it did not appear for too long either. The darkness only dissipated a little when a dazzling light appeared on the horizon. Then, the light grew brighter and brighter. It was so dazzling that everyone could not help but squint their eyes. However, the following scene exceeded everyone's imagination. They saw light and darkness balancing each other, and they were clearly separated, dividing the entire world into two halves. Oh my God, is this a competition between light and darkness? What a terrifying scene. It's as if the entire world is about to be divided. Why would such a scene appear in the ancient battlefield? What does this mean? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. No one knew how to explain this. Bailey Hongzhuang could not understand this either. However, she did not care about this at the moment. Instead, she was more concerned about the rich light energy that was pouring into her body. Previously, she had absorbed the power of darkness, but now, she was absorbing the power of light. Regardless of which one it was, it would be of great help to her improvement in strength. It was rare to have such an opportunity. She was more willing to spend her time on cultivation instead of thinking about the reason for all this. That was because she had a lot of time to think about this. However, these two powers might disappear at any time. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but Di Beiqin and the others also had the same idea. It was because of this idea that everyone could only watch as their cultivation level improved. Third level of the Radiant Moon Realm. Fourth level of the Radiant Moon Realm. Everyone was shocked to the point of numbness as they watched them improve step by step. They only wondered if they were cultivating in the same world as Bewitching and the others. How difficult was it to improve by one level? It had been several months since they entered the ancient battlefield. It was already good enough for them to improve by one level. There were also many who did not even improve by one level. Now, in such a short time, Bewitching and the others had improved all the way to the 4th level of the Radiant Moon Realm. How can anyone break through like this? Previously, I thought it was strange that Bewitching and the others had not broken through to the Radiant Moon Realm. Now, it seems that they have accumulated a lot of strength. Lin Taxing could not help but speak. His handsome face was full of emotion. This cultivation speed was really enviable. Lin Xianqian nodded slightly. If we encounter the Qing Devil again, we might be able to defeat him. Indeed, Lin Yi's eyes lit up. I was worried that we would encounter the Qing Devil again. Now, I can't wait to encounter him. He will be stunned when he sees second cousin and the other's cultivation level improve. But what is this sudden situation? Mo Yunjua looked at the clear sky. This situation was really too strange. This was clearly a battle between light and darkness. He remembered that Hong Zhuang had been worried about this before, which was why she was unwilling to become the Saint of Light. Fortunately, this did not happen in the end. However, now that such a scene had suddenly appeared, he could only hope that it would not be as he had imagined. All the cultivators in the ancient battlefield looked at this scene in shock. The rich black and the dazzling white were the only two colors left in this world. Chapter 58-76. Looking at the clear sky, they could still feel the confrontation of the two forces even though they were far away. The eyes of Huang Futing and the other shone brightly. As darkness attribute cultivators, they had been discriminated against for so long, and now everything was telling them that they could also be very powerful. As long as they had the cultivation method, they could become as powerful as light attribute cultivators. Hope, an unprecedented hope, bloomed in their hearts. Their gazes gradually shifted from the sky to Bewitching. It was this godlike man who had brought them endless hope. Bewitching's face was elegant and handsome, and his expression was calm and distant. Feeling the gazes of Huang Futing and the others, the corners of his lips gradually rose into a perfect arc, and his eyes were clear and warm. As the successor of the Dark Saint, this was his responsibility. At the same time, he was also very glad that everyone trusted him so much. In the world, the two forces kept each other in check. The terrifying energy made everyone feel that this was a confrontation between gods. However, other than the two types of energy, they couldn't see anything else. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others simply sat on the ground, closed their eyes, and quickly circulated their cultivation methods. As long as the two types of energy didn't disappear, they could take the opportunity to quickly improve. Huang Futing and the other darkness attribute cultivators couldn't care less about exposing their attributes at this moment. Such an opportunity was so rare that it would be a waste if they missed it. Immediately after, the dense black energy that everyone could see with the naked eye continuously poured into the bodies of Huang Futing and the others. At this moment, they finally understood that the cultivators with Huang Futing were all darkness attribute cultivators. They didn't see them make a move earlier, so they only thought that Huang Futing was like that. They didn't expect that the entire team was like that. This was too unbelievable. However, this wasn't the most shocking thing. The most shocking thing was the cultivation situation of Bewitching and the others. In their line of sight, Bewitching, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bai Li Yin, Shalinger Xiao He, and Xiao Bai all sat on the ground and gathered together. A huge cyclone appeared above everyone's head. The dense energy storm was attracted by their terrifying cultivation speed and directly poured into their bodies in the form of cyclones. However, other than Ling, who had a white cyclone above her head, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had a black and white cyclone above their heads. Darkness and light intertwined. These two types of energy, which everyone thought were impossible to merge, had actually merged together at this moment and were being absorbed into their bodies. The cyclones were as huge as whirlwinds. Even though they were a certain distance away, everyone could still feel the terrifying power. What was going on? This question appeared in everyone's mind. Compared to Ling's cyclones, Ling Huangfu Ting's black cyclones, Bailey Hongzhuang and the black cyclones. Black cyclones? Wenyin, why can't I understand? Murong Jing scratched his head with a puzzled look on his face. Do you know what's going on? Chapter 5877. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the black and white cyclone. Murong Jing emphasized. Why can't I understand the situation? I'm even more confused about this. Jiang Wenyin spread his hands. I feel like I can't understand everything that's happened to them. This situation had completely subverted their understanding. Murong Jing still wanted to ask, but he simply didn't ask. He couldn't understand anyway. Di Xiaofeng was amused when he saw that Jiang Wenyin and Murong Jing, who had always been smart, were dumbfounded. However, he also understood that even he, who already knew the situation, was very shocked, let alone Jiang Wenyin and Murong Jing. All this time, he only thought that Beiqin and Hongzhuang had dual attributes. He never thought that even Yin Che, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai also had dual attributes. This was really too shocking. He never thought that there would be people with dual attributes. But when they appeared together at this moment, he didn't know what to say. Everyone looked up at the sky. The rich black and the extreme white were still exerting force. It seemed that they wouldn't dissipate for a while if they were careless. Although they didn't know what this scene meant, everyone understood that there was no danger now. Therefore, everyone sat down one after another. However, unlike Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who were concentrating on cultivating, they could only sit and rest. The air was filled with these two powers. Even if they cultivated, the speed of improvement was very slow. It was better to rest peacefully. I haven't encountered many cultivators with the dark attribute before. Now it seems that what happened back then must be true. If the dark attribute becomes powerful, it must be very terrifying. Lin Taxing's face was filled with emotion. His gaze couldn't help but fall on Huang Futing. Huang Futing was so outstanding in the past. He was the most famous among the younger generation, but he didn't expect to fall from the altar after awakening the dark attribute. At that time, he felt that it was really a pity. However, after seeing Beichun display the dark power, he suddenly understood that everything was not what everyone thought. Since the darkness attribute was so powerful, Huang Futing's awakening of the darkness attribute also meant that his talent was outstanding. Both Di Beiqin and Huang Futing could be called peerless geniuses, and Beichin's situation of limited growth had never appeared before. Now, there seemed to be some kind of relationship between Huang Futing and Beichin. Vaguely, he had a premonition. In the future, Beichin and Huang Futing might completely change everyone's view of the dark forces. Because he saw the fervent hope in the eyes of Huang Futing and the other darkness attribute cultivators. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others broke through quickly, their speed slowed down slightly. However, in the eyes of the crowd, their speed was still very shocking. Compared to their rapid breakthroughs, everyone looked at Ling'er with a doubtful gaze. Logically speaking, they were all in the same environment, so even if there was a slight difference in their breakthroughs, the difference wouldn't be too great. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had already broken through to the 5th level of the Radiant Moon Realm. Why hadn't Ling'er broken through to the 5th level of the Radiant Moon Realm? At this moment, Ling'er could also feel the energy in her body rising crazily. However, every time she wanted to break through, there would be a shackle firmly suppressing her, preventing her from successfully breaking through. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.